There we go. All righty. So let's take a look quickly at our Dropbox for culture and climate. So as we're looking at culture and climate, it's a very short assignment. I'm not asking you to recap everything that you're watching in that video. You're going to watch it. One page is probably enough page for this assignment, but if you go over to a half, 1.5, that's fine. But in paragraph 1, you're just going to define what it says in the video, what culture is, as well as what you've read in Carbo and Marzano that talks about what is culture and putting those two together for paragraph 1. For paragraph 2, you're going to do the exact same thing for climate. What is the climate? Most people get the two intertwined and think they mean the same, but they're not the same. Then paragraph 3, you're going to go back and pick up some of that you wrote about with core values and bringing that back. And you're going to explain the significance of how core values impact and create the climate or perception of the school culture. And that's that assignment. It's very short because you can tell me what culture is in one sentence, and then you can justify it by bringing in what you've gleaned from the video as well as your textbook. Same thing for paragraph 2, and then wrapping it up in paragraph 3. And all of this should be done in third person, nothing personal. We don't need to be speaking in first person. Make sure you have your cover page as well as your reference. For those of you guys that are struggling to do the reference for the video, please use this Purdue OWL citing. You can type in all the information and it will shoot it out to you exactly what the reference should be for this activity. As well as this is your rubric, making sure we're paying attention to the rubric and what it's asking you to do. And that's pretty much that assignment for culture and climate. Any questions about that one? Okay. And there's also another page in your module that goes through citing a video as well. Let me see. Okay. Now, the Dropbox for the Ron Clark video is a little bit different, but about the same. Again, it's a one pager. Don't need you to don't just go in fluffing. Answer the questions, do the assignment, and you're done. And that's the expectation. So you're going to view that Ron Clark video that's there, and then you're going to think about his words of wisdom. And in that reflection, you're going to pick out 3 things that stood out to you. That's the task, is to pick out the 3 things that stood out to you and how you can incorporate his words of wisdom as a new leader. So as you're looking at paragraph 1, I always like to go back to it because it's so specific. Provide an overview of your 3 things that stood out to you. Then in paragraph 2, you're going to briefly give a brief overview of each of the 3 things. So, you do your introduction. These are my 3 things. This is why, breaking those 3 things down in the second paragraph, or the words of wisdom that stood out and telling why. And then in paragraph 3, guys, answer the 2 questions. That's it. Was it new information? Yes, it was new information. No, it wasn't new information. I've gone to the Ron Clark Academy. I've heard all of his wisdom. Did you find it interesting? I learned something new. These are things I already know. How will this information help prepare you as a future leader? Just answer the 2 questions. Once you've gotten that done, the rubric is here. You can look at exactly what your paragraphs, how they will be scored. And that is that assignment. I will be so happy when all the pollen is done and all the things. All right, so that gets us through week 8. Then we roll into next week, and this is
Dr. Cockrell, I have a question about the reference for the Ron Clark video. The APA manual says that the person who posted the video is how you refer to it, but then in module 8, the statement is a little different. Could you clarify for the in-text and for the reference page?
I follow the APA format when I grade these, and I'm gonna always tell you, what is his name, Matthew? I should know this. I've graded so many of them. I remember this first name, but I
Yes, it is.
always cite the person who posted it because Ron Clark didn't post it, right? Elizabeth Warner didn't post the video. They're just in them. So yes, that is a great question. Yes, please make sure you're citing the person who's actually posting of the video.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions about that? I didn't mean to move so quickly.
I did mine incorrectly then. Can I just re-upload mine?
Of course, until 11:59 and 59 seconds on tomorrow, you have all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All righty. So going into module 9, this is the week that you're turning in your 6 domains project, as well as those of you all that are in the specialist program, you're turning in your best practices PowerPoint. Can't talk either. So when we talk about the 6 domains project, and I think I hit on this in our last virtual, but I just want to say it again. You are not going to take your 6 papers that you've turned in and put them in a PowerPoint. I want you to think in your mind, if I had to present this PowerPoint, what are my high points of domain 1? What would an administrator do to make sure you're leading and making decisions based upon your school's data to improve student achievement? Bullet point it, graphically make it appealing, but you're not gonna type out a paragraph for this. If you were presenting it, if this was a face-to-face class and you had to come in and present it. But the other end of that is you have to remember we're not presenting, so I need to give that information in a way that it's read and still gets the full understanding. Mindful, I know the material, so you're not having to put as much into those slides. Any questions about that? Because I've gotten these projects and I've literally gotten people's 6 papers in a 15-page PowerPoint. And when I send it back, they're like, but why? Because that's not the assignment. So if you have questions, please come off mute and ask them now. No questions. Okay, the rubric is here for you if you have any questions about each domain and what I will be looking at. This should be a fun activity where you show what you've learned this trimester about the 6 domains. And as I said when we started this class, this is some really good information, very powerful information that I hope as you leave the classrooms and go into your leadership roles, you will remember some of the things you've learned in this class. And now this project, the second assignment that's due next week is your Dropbox. Is your Dropbox for your group project for best practices. The only thing I would say about this is you're doing elementary, you're doing a middle school slide, and you're doing a high school slide. The middle school slide is the elementary, middle, and high is best practices that take place within a school. Is it that you guys are a PBIS school? Is it that you do scheduling a certain way? Or your morning routines? Those are best practices. And what I will do for after you've turned them all in, I will also upload all of them at the very bottom of your modules page. You'll see all of the best practices for all of the teams or groups so that you'll have a document that you can actually have for when you do go out and start practicing as an administrator. But this should be a really fun, lighthearted assignment that you get to work on with your group, and you get to talk about some different best practices. And it's one of those things that actually will be used for practicum hours when you start loading your practicum hours, because you're going to work with your mentor to talk about what are the best practices in your school. If you're having a hard time coming up with them, or you don't have a high school person but know someone, reach out to them. So you will get practicum hours for this activity. Any questions about this actual assignment?
I'm assuming that it's okay if some of those practices are repeated. So like
Of
in
course.
junior high and high school, typically best practice is usually pretty similar.
They are, because scheduling, y'all pretty much do similar things the way you receive kids in the building. So yes, that is the same. Thanks, David, for that question. And then your rubric is here for any questions or things that you may have about how it's going to be scored. And then we move into week 10. Week 10 is probably the easiest of all of the weeks because you're just doing a discussion. And I want to caution you about the due date. It is due May 7th, which is a Wednesday. So you don't have until that Sunday to get that part done. So go ahead and be mindful of getting that Dropbox done for that. And it's basically 3 questions. You don't have to respond to any classmates for this one. You could literally do it today and check that box because it's just a reflection of this class. And please be honest, I really do like feedback. I do want to remind you that registration, that's one of the things that Dr. Sellers want you guys to know to make sure you're getting registered for the summer session. All right. Any questions about all of this that we've just gone through? I know it was a lot.
I have one question. Let's say I completely missed the mark on one of my assignments and got like a big chunk of points taken off. Are we allowed to upload corrections?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to double check.
The only time that happens, I will type in there, please resubmit. If I type, please resubmit, then yes, redo it, send it back, upload it again. I hate that, but it's just like when we grade our students, they don't really get to do it again. I'm sorry. Good question. Any others about our section? Any things that you guys want to share? Any questions you may have? Any feedback you may have? This is your moment to do that. We're on agenda item number 2.
Last week I tried to do the Ron Clark video,
Mm-hmm.
and it was probably a user error, but I didn't know if anyone else if they got an error trying to pull up that video. It probably was me somehow, and I'm going to try it
You
again
didn't
today,
access
but
it at all, Miss Lindsay? You couldn't get it to open for you?
no, it said, I don't know if it said broken link or something like that, but it probably was me, and I haven't tried it since. I probably should have tried it before asking, but
It's just the Ron Clark one?
mm,
Okay,
I tried it at work and it didn't work, but I just tried it this morning as we were on because I was going to ask you about it and it worked. But
okay.
I couldn't pull it up at school.
Oh, I bet
that's what it is.
my issue as well, because we can't have
Mhm.
Yep. Okay.
We have a whole bunch of YouTube issues right now on our school Wi-Fi.
And it could have been even on my school computer, maybe, but I bet I was at school when I tried it.
Well,
So,
if you check it and it doesn't work, shoot me an email and then
okay.
I'll send you a direct link.
Okay.
All right, that's a
All
good
right.
question. I'm only seeing 8 names in the chat, so I have 14 participants on this call. Please make sure you signed in with your name, your William Carey, the way it's listed in William Carey, and your section number if you did not. Please do that. All righty, so this last part of our class is the teaching part of the class, and you get to teach each other. I get to listen. So we like to do what is called an elevator speech. You've gone through the 6 domains, you are an expert, right? If you were on the elevator with someone and they asked the question, which of the 6 domains impressed you the most this trimester? What would you say in that 30 seconds to a minute ride on the elevator? So if I were doing it and I was on the elevator and I would say to the person, domain 6 is the domain that interests me the most for this class, just because I felt like that was the one area that I needed the most growth in. I now learned that all things have fiscal responsibilities that are asset tagged all the way to a budget. And that's the area I learned the most about being federal, state, and district responsive. Did y'all get that? So that's what your charge is. It is 14 people on here minus me makes 13. So we can do this. You can do it. Take 2 minutes to wrap your brain around which one you're going to pick and what you want to say about it. And I'll give you about 2 minutes to kind of think through that. And then we'll start. You need longer than 2 minutes. Oh, okay. Kelsey said no. I see you shaking your head. Thank you, Kelsey. All right. Who would like to kickstart us off? Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome. Um, First, I'd like to say that Domain 1, a data-driven focus for school improvement, really speaks to my heart because as a state tested teacher, oftentimes it's easy to use this particular strategy to improve our test scores. The data is readily available, and most districts, I know our district is committed, and we have, incredible resources to assess our students, and we are taught how to break down the data and then how to go back and to reteach and remediate. And we do it every single day. And I feel like that when people are not state tested, they feel like they can't use data to drive instruction. But I feel like that in PLCs for all classes, whether they're state tested or not, common assessments can be created. Those teachers can PLC no matter what the subject area is. They can give the same assessments and they can create their own data and use that data for school improvement for every single class on campus. So Domain 1 is really speaks to my heart.
I
I'll go
agree
I
next.
think,
100%
Okay,
that
go ahead.
sorry, I'm sorry. Is something wrong with my computer because I couldn't hear?
no, I was muted. I realized it. My computer's like, unmute yourself. Domain 1 is, I agree with what she said about every subject area needs to look at data. Everyone should be tracking data. And if you teach a class of kids and there are multiple sections, everybody should be using common assessments. That just is best practice. So great job on that, Amanda. And I saw somebody had their hand up. Who was it?
I'll go next.
Okay,
Courtney.
Courtney, thank you.
Yeah. I think Domain 5, especially with the school year we've had this year, is probably the most important to me. We lost our supervising principal like the second week of September. He passed away of a heart attack. And so we were kind of thrown into a tailspin. And then we had an assistant superintendent come in to finish us out through December. Then we had our new middle school principal was promoted to the supervising principal in January. So we've had 3 very different principals. And so just the fact that Domain 5 talks about communicating your core values, all 3 have had different core values and how they've run the school. And so it's just shown me how important it is to communicate effectively and clearly with your teachers on how you want to run things and how you think things should be done effectively, because we've had very different people this year running our school. And so it's been like 3 different school years in one.
Thank you, Courtney. That is a lot. Wow. But you still have a smile on a Saturday, so that tells us you're there for the kids and just getting through it. All right, I love it. Core values. Everybody's raising their hand. All right, Mickey, I'm sorry.
The one that I have the most connection to is Domain 4. which is the culture and the care and the collaboration. First of all, as a special education teacher, that's my number one thing with all of my students is making those connections, um, to get to the point of bridging those gaps academically. Also, we just recently, in the last couple of weeks, lost a fifth grade student, in an accident, a bike riding accident. Um, so to really see our school come together as a community and just to support each other, it's been a lot. But the one that I probably have the least connection to is the resources and the budgeting and those things, because unless you're in that position, you don't have a lot of firsthand knowledge about those things. So that's definitely the one that I would need the most support and practice in, I feel like.
Thank you, Mickey. It just depends on where you are in life because of that student. I mean, yes, fifth grade. Oh, my condolences. That is huge. All right. I think I saw Kelsey and then Nancy and then Thalia, was it?
Okay. First I want to say, if you hear my dog bark, I'm sorry. I've got birthday party at family in town, so I'm outside, but I'm with the dog. So, and then also my condolences to both Mickey and Courtney for y'all's losses for the year. Um, I'm going to follow up with Mickey, Domain 4, community of care and collaboration. So there's some words that I underlined from each element that I think are huge in leadership as a whole. So collaborative groups working together, teachers having roles in the decision-making process. I think that's very important because at the end of the day, your teachers are the one that are basically leading the school as a whole. So they're the ones in there doing all the work, in the grind, and so they really know what the students need. Um, and then child-centered school with input from staff. I think that that's important, along with celebrating diversity and culture. Um, Multicultural inclusiveness is so important, and I think that it's important that a school has those things. So all of these things are buzzwords that I just read to you, but I feel like in order for a school to be successful as a whole, you have to have these things, because I've been a part of schools where you have bits and pieces, or you have what I would say like inconsistencies in these in the whole school. You can feel it. And now, I'm at a school where I feel like they intentionally work on every bit of these things, like, input from staff, multicultural inclusiveness, all of these things. So, community of care and collaborations, probably my best. And like Mickey said, the resources, but I've been doing this stuff with my principal, like the auditing. I mean, that is like a whole nother world. It is. And it's a lot, like from book inventory to auditing all of the things in the school. So,
Well, good. It's also great to know what area you have to grow in, and I think resource management is always going to be one. Um, Next person.
That's me. I would choose domain 5 simply because we have to have value in everything that we do. I have been with the same school system for 14 years. I wasn't always a teacher. I worked my way up from a teacher's assistant, tier 3, to what I am now today. And our school started off as a D when I was there. And it's went from a B to a C, back to a D. We are an A school this year. And it's hard to keep that, but you have to have those values. You have to have set in stone what your expectations are. You have to have a strong leader. And I feel like we finally have the correct leader within our school and also in our classrooms. For me, myself, I have a lot of values and expectations that I expect from my students, and they know that if they don't meet those expectations, then we're going to redo and we're going to redo until we get that right because our principal, they expect excellence of us, so we have to expect excellence from them.
Good job. I agree 100%. Expectations have to have them. All right. All right. Talia?
I'll go next. I thought it was someone before me, but um, I'm not sure what domain it is. It may be with domain 5, but culture and climate spoke out to me a lot. I previously taught in the same school for 19 years, and I moved to a new school 2 years ago. And when I went to that school, it seems like it was a celebration for everything. Like, okay, today is Monday. We're gonna get out, boys and girls, and we're gonna be out on the lawn and we're gonna be excited. And my previous school, I was there 19 years, but I may have had maybe 5 or 6 different leaders in that time. And it was more so of a, work, work, work. So as a teacher, I'm like, oh my God, they're cutting into my instructional time. Like, and I even told my principal, I said, sometimes I don't know if I work at um a summer camp or a school because it's just something always going on. And she laughed and she said, well, Miss Jones, she said, we are a school, but we serve many different purposes. And I said, I know, but I just, it's just killing my instructional time. And last year it was really a tough transition for me because like I said, it just seemed like it was always something, but this year I was better prepared for it. And as I read that chapter, it resonated with me that that was the culture of that community, that was the culture of the school. And although it was an adjustment for me, the children looked forward to it. It gave them a reason to want to come to school every day. The parents were, they came out, they were engaged. Community members were engaged. Like my new principal, she has culture and climate on lock. And that was an eye opener for me because I was like, what is going on here? And that spoke out to me a lot, and it explained to me. And I'm gonna write this I started writing this in my which chapter in my little Dropbox, so you'll probably get a little repeat of it. But made me understand why she did those things and why, even though I felt like it was taken away from instructional time, and I still feel like it does sometimes, that those things are important because the children, they really do enjoy, it gives them something to look forward to.
Good job. Yes, that will speak to culture and climate. There's still, and if you're in elementary, I know I find myself saying it all the
I
time.
am.
There's still children. There's
They
because
are.
I'm a little different than the past principal that was here in that I like to do a celebration and I like to make sure kids are having fun. We're going to get the business. When we close the classroom door, we're in here to learn, but they're kids. They're still babies.
They are.
And when you look at a third grader, they're 8. This is an 8-year-old. And I would always tell them, I said, y'all, when my babies were 8, I was still scooping them up in the grocery store on my hip running through like they're babies. So fun, as long as it doesn't negate learning, is always important. Lindsay, I think you were next.
And I've got children playing in the backyard, which I've told them I'm like, stay outside, but they're 6. So, and there's a 15-year-old brother that is not exactly the best babysitter, but so you may hear kids in the background, but, so the domain that I feel like I connect with the most, but also I probably would need a lot of growth in on some parts, was domain 3, especially the hiring, supporting staff, and retaining staff. So I've been at 3 different schools, and the current school that I'm at now, the leaders that I've been under have been like super intentional about hiring the right people. And the schools I've been at in the past, they were growing so much it was hard to hire 12 5-star teachers at one time. So you really had to be very kind of had to be thinking about who you're hiring in September for when you actually can hire them in April. So, I don't know. I just saw that that was like a really important part of a successful school was really, really finding the right people. Um, the other part of that is something I feel like I do a lot in my job now, which is, supporting teachers and, almost kind of, I'm a counselor, so I do a lot of parent teacher conferences and kind of helping teachers explain what they do because sometimes I know they're doing a ton of stuff in the classroom, but it's hard to explain that to a parent or, um, so I kind of, that's how I feel like I can support teachers is I'm like, well, wait a minute, now you are doing this in your class. This is what you do. They're like, oh, yeah, So I feel like that's something that I do well, in my school. The part that I would probably need some, growth in is doing those evaluations. I found myself whenever I was doing like the mock teacher one that sometimes I would get really involved in a lesson or think about, see something else rather than what was really going on. So, I feel like I would really need to look at the, what am I trying to see today? What am I trying to find? What do I want to make sure that, the teacher is doing? So I guess that one was the one that I connected with the most and the one that I probably need the most growth in because there's so many different parts of it.
Awesome. Yes. I love the fact that you brought out the teacher part, hiring and retaining teachers, because that is the culture of your building. And when you guys watch that Ron Clark video, if you haven't already, you'll see him talk about the nature of teachers. And my very first time watching that video, I had a really big aha moment, and you'll start jotting those teachers' names down, like in your building that you work with. And it's hiring season. Knock on wood, I've hired all my staff for this year. But it is essential in making sure you're pairing people correctly and that you're, supporting your staff the best way you can. Teacher evaluations, all I'm going to say is that you get better over time with those. They will grow. All right, Tyler, you're up.
So I'm going back to domain one. I really enjoyed domain one. I'm a sped teacher this year. And we base everything in our school off of data though. Everything we do is derived from data. And it's not just my class, it is the entire school. We base our data, we look at it and we say, okay, where do we need to grow at and why do we need to grow in that area? Is it a teaching strategy that we need to change? Does the curriculum altogether need to be changed next year? And this also sets us up for how we're going to do state testing the next year. Everything that we look at is data driven. And I just find that to be extremely helpful and useful for anybody that comes into the school setting because if you're not looking at data, then ultimately we're failing our students and what we can do better.
Agreed. I have a love-hate relationship with testing and accountability. I have a love-hate relationship with testing, not accountability, because data keeps us accountable and we are accountable to children that they're learning. And I'm with you. I think everyone needs to be able to track their data. And if you don't do it, you need a seat at the table to do it. If you are not in a classroom setting where you have data talks or you're invited to the data meetings, you need to go in and talk to your principal. I want to know about the data that comes in our building. I want to be able to analyze it and know what it means and how we implement instruction based off of the data. How do we change instruction based off of data? I use the word implement because I tell my teachers, when we look at data, we're making a change. we're implementing something. We're not doing what we did last week. We're doing something different because the data tells us we have to. We have a different set of kids that this sitting in seats this year than we did last year, so we can't do what we did last year. So I agreed. If you don't know data, please have that conversation with your mentor principal, that you need to be having those conversations. Because if you're thinking or wanting to be in a leadership role, whether it's a curriculum director, SPED director, literacy specialist, anything, your questions at your interview are going to all be around how do you move the needle of instruction? And how do we do that? How do we grow kids? How do we look at our bottom 25? We go back to the data. So thank you, Tyler, for pulling that out. Who would like to go next?
Me.
All right, Angela.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can.
Can you hear me? Okay. Because I know last time it was off. All right. Good morning. There are two actually that stood out for me. One was domain one, being that I'm a tested area teacher. And that is one of the ways that I really have my big celebration for my students that, have scored proficient and above on testing as a whole. But it shows me, their gap. But the biggest one that showed that I saw that stood out to me was domain four, having a collaboration of care for teachers, because during this school year we did lose 3 teachers, and it had caused our administrator to have to teach a class because it was a tested area class, and that was her background. So she didn't want our scores to, drop tremendously due to not having that teacher in the classroom. So she had to actually go in on a day-to-day basis. That's what she's doing now currently. And she's teaching the class as well as doing her administrative duties. So the reason why, like I said, stood out to me, because I said that, if you can retain these teachers, then they know that they have the care and love, and they can pour that same care and love into the students.
Agreed, Angela. Yes. And you said lost teachers. They went somewhere else. They didn't like pass away or anything.
No, they went to a they went to a different profession. They said that it was a little chaotic for them in the building. So they because I even had one that was like tag team with me, and I tried to talk her out of it, but she said it just wasn't for her. She said it was just
Education
too
is hard.
chaotic.
Education is hard. Parents are not the way they were when I started 20 years ago. Like it's just a different world. And when you get people in it that first of all don't have tough skin, and then secondly don't love it, you gotta love this job. You just do, because we are the only people that deal with all the people. We deal with parents, we deal with the community, and we deal with the kids. So you do have to love it. I hate that for your school though. Who has not had a chance to go? David, would you like to go next?
Yes, ma'am. The domain that I found probably the most impactful, that is domain three, with professional development. I can't tell you how many times I've been in professional development and the teachers would just be sitting there joking or talking or not paying attention because it didn't really have any meaning to them. So I just feel that it is extremely important for teachers to be provided with professional development that is going to help them in their classroom, in their subject area, in the things that they need help with. So if you're doing your evaluations of your teachers correctly, then you should know what areas your teachers need to have professional development provided to them in order for them to be the most effective teacher that they can be. So, whatever that looks like for whatever subject area, I just feel like professional development is It's literally what it is. I mean, it's professional development. It is to help develop teachers into what they can be, not what they currently are. But to just provide professional development that doesn't have meaning, nobody's getting anything out of it. It's pointless. So I mean, that domain 3 to me really kind of resonated because I've been in so many professional developments that were not useful.
You know, the thing about professional development when I was in the classroom always got me was, why am I here? This isn't for me. And as an administrator, I'm like, this professional development is just for math teachers. It's okay that the ELA teachers don't have to be in here. You know, I think sometimes in our mind, we're like, well, they're going to be upset. They're in professional development and these staff people are getting an hour off. You know, sometimes that, but it's a give and take. So this next one may just be for ELA, but making people sit in a room and they getting absolutely nothing out of it. You know, I told y'all in virtual class 1, time is the only thing in life you can't get back. And I'm a really good steward of my time these days. I just don't like to waste people's time.
But to add to that, they're not getting an hour off.
They're not, because
They're
we
working. They're working on what they need to be working on to help the students. So
yes,
they're not actually getting time off.
but you've heard it. I know you've heard it.
I have.
That's what it said, and I've had to say that. Why aren't the SPED teachers in here? Because they have a whole lot of IEPs that they have to get written that you don't have to get written. They got to meet with every last one of their parents. You don't have to do that. Like I can't tell you how many times I've had to explain why people aren't sitting in a room. But they don't ask when they have the block off. They don't ask questions then. But I agree, professional development needs to meet the needs of the people in the room. I always think about it, and I don't know if y'all listen to Eddie B's comedy. He talks about being professionally developed. If you've never seen his comedy, go listen to some of it. It's hilarious around professional development. But yes, I agree 100%. Give people what they need. I think Athena, you have not? Okay.
Okay, I chose domain 2 and 4 as relevant for me because this year we implemented a new reading and math program at our school. And that was interesting because as we were going through it, we noticed that there were things that we weren't sure if it was going to be rigorous enough for our students. And so we really had to evaluate the program as we were using it. And we've had an A rating for the last 2 years. So we were really trying to keep that. And also, I was grade level chair, so I was facilitating meetings with our teachers and having to group together and talk about how the program was affecting our students and assessing them well. So we had to meet and discuss and collaborate a lot. Sometimes that went well, sometimes not so much because we had new teachers and veteran teachers working together and their ideas would be mixed. So I really got to experience trying to collaborate and keep everyone happy with the decisions, but also make sure that our students were at the forefront and they were the most important to focus on. And then also changing and just changing the program to where it met the students' needs the most. So that was interesting to learn about.
You took a lot of big
It was
jobs.
a lot. Yes. Yes.
Implemented, amplified in 3rd grade this year, and it's a big job to roll out new curriculum. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
You have to, and that goes back to that community of care because you got to care about what people feel about it.
Mhm.
And that some people are going to have a hard time and listening to frustrations.
Yes.
And me,
Especially.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, especially with something new, I think it was discussed before where veteran teachers, they have a vision, they know what they know, and to introduce something new is kind of hard sometimes. And you have to say, wait, just give it time. And yeah.
Yes, anytime you implement a new program, you have to give it 3 years. You know, I know a lot of schools will buy a program, throw it out, and I'm gonna get something new next year. You didn't
Yeah.
get everything takes time. You don't go to the gym and lose 30 pounds the first day. You know, you have to think through it. All right, Amy, did you already present? Awesome.
So domain 5 core values is really important. I teach at a very small private school in Louisiana, and we just hired a new principal, and her core values match up extremely well. She's compatible. So our current principal, who's been there since like 1998, she said she was the only administrator for a long time before they got an assistant principal, and now she's been moved to the position of head of schools. So it's really important that their core values line up, and they're very transparent and open with the community. We're trying to build a new school. We've been gifted 30 acres for a long time now, and we're just working on a capital campaign to raise some money to try to build a new school. So we held a back to school meeting to introduce a new principal to the parents and the community. And they were very honest that they were going to try to focus on building up our high school, because we're a first grade through 12th grade school. And then that way we can attract, high school, they always want to leave, and we wanted to try to keep them there. So very important to reach our goals as a school when these core values line up the way they do. So it's been a great year.
And being a private school, your community has to know your core values. Like
Absolutely.
through, because they're choosing to go to you guys. So yes, that is a thing. Good luck on y'all's campaign.
Thank you.
All right, Vicki, did you go? Is that everybody then?
I didn't go. I don't know. I got in late.
All righty, you're
Um, so the domain that speaks to me is domain 1 because this is my first year in 3rd grade. So using data to drive my instruction has been a major thing for me this year. But the issue that we've been having is too much data and not enough time to actually analyze it. Like we're getting data from like 3 different sources. So most of our time is collecting the data, but we're not being given the time to actually analyze the data and implement it in the correct ways. So that's something that an administrator has to look at is, yeah, it's great to have data, but are you actually giving the teachers time to find a way to use that data? So that's what stood out to me.
Oh, that is so true. Sometimes we get data overload, and then people get paralyzed because they have so much, they don't really know what to do with it. And especially, and I know for me, I have a lot of work next year because my 3rd grade team is going to be new-ish. And so you have to teach people what's essential and what's not, because some things are just not essential to spend time on. All right, I'm looking around. Please don't let me miss you because I do go back through and make sure everybody spoke up.
I
I
didn't
think,
go yet,
okay,
Dr. Cockrell.
I'm looking for you. Okay, Vicki, all right,
Vicky.
ready.
Okay. I chose domain 5, core values. I'm a 3rd grade teacher right now, and I strongly feel like creating a positive environment in my classroom where my students want to come into class every day. And I can see how that could carry over as a future school leader, wanting your students to come in, wanting your staff to come in, having a positive climate and a positive cultural. And then I felt like domain 6 is where I would need to grow the most because I really don't have much knowledge about budgets and, I do assets, but I don't know all the ins and outs about that and inventory. So that's what I felt like I would need to grow the most in.
I don't think anyone's prepared for all the budget things when you get there. I'm just saying, it's budget lines and codes I still don't know. I just continuously just try to learn, and I keep a running notebook so I keep all my thoughts in it. Okay, last check. Thank you, Vicki, for your thoughts. Guys, it is always a pleasure to do this class. I know for many, this is the first class you take on your journey to being an administrator, is the, roles of the principal. And I'm always very excited for a new cohort. I learned about as much from y'all than what y'all are learning from Marzano and Carbo, because I'm taking notes and saying, oh, that's a great idea when I'm reading your domains projects and different things. I am a lifetime learner like most of you all are. I wish y'all a lot of success in this program. I got my bachelor's at Delta State, my master's and specialist at Mississippi College, and then I did the doctoral program with William Carey. And what I would say is I love the way that William Carey paces out different programs. I do. Um, you learn so much, and I feel like it's such pertinent information. Whereas in other programs, I felt like I was just doing a lot of papers to get a grade. And I hope y'all did not feel that way, and I hope you got something from it. I would tell you to put that textbook up, put it on a shelf, because when you walk into the role of a leader and you start thinking, oh gosh, is my culture okay? Is the climate? You can go back to that chapter and start reading and say, okay, these are the things I need to make sure I'm doing. Um, if you have questions, if you have any concerns, please email me. I'm sorry I've been a little delayed in some of the emails. It's just, y'all know it's the season we're in, end of the year state testing, and I'm the only person who does IEPs during state testing because my assistant principal is the STC. So I spent a lot of days sitting in IEP meetings and all the things. So forgive my delay, but I try to get to them as quickly as I can. And if I don't answer, always shoot another one, because if I see those numbers growing on my phone, I can't stand to see them. So I have to stop and answer. But if y'all need me, email me. I don't check the inbox. I'm gonna say that again because I've gotten a few inbox, and I'll see them when I open my computer on Saturday to grade. But you send it on like Tuesday, and I always feel bad that I didn't respond sooner. But I don't go on Canvas unless I'm getting ready to respond. I'm getting ready to grade. But my handy dandy's with me all the time, so it's easier for me to check an email. If y'all, like I said, need me, email me. Any questions, comments, concerns before we get off? This is the end.
Did you get my email I sent about I only submitted part of the assignment?
If you go
Okay.
back and look, I've already updated all of that. I was grading.
Okay, thank you.
Clock last night to make sure everybody had what they needed.
Thank you.
Any others? Hearing none. All right, y'all have a super fantastic day. Much success in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same to you. Thanks.
Thank you.